At 54, Jonathan Mitchell had built an empire. His investment firm commanded respect from Wall Street to Main Street, and his penthouse overlooked the city he'd conquered through sheer determination. Yet as he adjusted his bow tie in the mirror before tonight's charity gala, he felt something he rarely experienced: nervousness. The invitation had arrived 3 weeks ago, embossed with gold lettering that announced the Children's Hospital Foundation benefit. What made his hands tremble wasn't the thought of writing another generous check. It was knowing that Margaret would be there. His ex-wife, who had remarried a prominent surgeon and seemed to have found the happiness that had eluded them 20 years ago. Jonathan paused, remembering their last encounter at a mutual friend's anniversary party. Margaret's pitying smile when she'd asked, "Still married to your work, Jonathan?" had stung more than he cared to admit. Tonight, she'd undoubtedly arrive with her accomplished husband, radiating the contentment of a life well lived while he'd arrive alone, as always. The idea came to him suddenly, desperately. He needed a companion, someone elegant, intelligent, who could match Margaret's grace. Not a real relationship, of course, just someone to help him save face for one evening. His assistant, Patricia, had worked for him for 15 years. She understood his world, his quirks, his need for privacy. When he explained his predicament the next morning, she listened with the patient understanding of someone who had watched him build walls around his heart for decades. "Sir," she said gently, "I have a suggestion. My daughter runs a small catering business. She's recently widowed, actually. She's been struggling to get back on her feet, both personally and professionally. Perhaps you could help each other." That's how Jonathan found himself sitting across from Claire Sullivan, in a quiet cafe the following Tuesday. She was not what he'd expected. At 48, she carried herself with quiet dignity. Her auburn hair touched with silver at the temples, laugh lines around eyes that held both warmth and a shadow of recent grief. "I appreciate you considering this," Claire said, stirring her coffee slowly. Patricia explained the situation. I haven't been to anything like a formal event since my husband passed 2 years ago." Her voice caught slightly. "But the catering contract you're offering would really help my business." Jonathan studied her face. There was an honesty there that his business world rarely offered. "You don't have to do this if it makes you uncomfortable," he found himself saying. "I know it's an unusual arrangement." Claire smiled, and something in his chest loosened. "Mr. Mitchell, I've learned that life is full of unusual arrangements. Sometimes they're exactly what we need." They spent the next hour discussing the evening's logistics, but Jonathan found himself drawn into conversations about her late husband David, a high school teacher who'd loved gardening and terrible puns. She asked about his business, listening with genuine interest as he explained investment strategies, never once glazing over with polite boredom like so many others did. "You really love what you do," she observed. "That's rare." "It's all I've ever really had," he admitted, then wondered why he'd revealed that to a virtual stranger. The week before the gala passed quickly. Claire proved to be remarkably easy to work with. When they met to coordinate their story, she suggested they simply tell the truth, that they were friends, exploring the possibility of something more. It was honest, without being complicated. "People can sense pretense," she said wisely, "but they respond to genuine connection." The evening of the gala, Jonathan arrived at Claire's modest townhouse with a corsage, white orchids that complemented the navy dress she'd described. When she opened the door, he felt his breath catch. The dress was elegant, but not ostentatious, and she'd styled her hair in a classic updo that showcased her natural beauty. "You look lovely," he said, and meant it. "Thank you," she replied, accepting the corsage with obvious pleasure. "It's been a long time since someone brought me flowers." In the car, they talked easily about everything and nothing. Claire shared stories about her catering adventures, including a wedding where the cake had collapsed just before the reception. Jonathan found himself laughing genuinely for the first time in months. "How did you fix it?" he asked. Ice cream sundae bar, she said with a grin. Sometimes the backup plan turns out better than the original. The gala was held at the city's grand old hotel, its ballroom glittering with crystal chandeliers and the city's elite. Jonathan felt Claire's slight hesitation as they entered and instinctively offered his arm. "Just remember," he murmured, "you belong here as much as anyone." "Thank you," she whispered back, and he felt her relax beside him. The evening unfolded beautifully. Claire charmed everyone she met with her genuine interest in their lives and her gentle humor. When they encountered Margaret and her husband, Dr. Williams, Claire's grace was evident. "What a beautiful venue for such an important cause," Claire said warmly to Margaret. "Jonathan tells me you've been involved with the Children's Hospital for many years. That must be incredibly rewarding." Margaret's prepared superiority melted into genuine conversation about her volunteer work. Dr. Williams and Jonathan discovered a shared interest in sailing. For the first time in years, Jonathan felt normal, not like he was performing or competing, just enjoying the company of good people. As the evening progressed, Jonathan realized something had shifted. He wasn't thinking about impressing Margaret anymore. Instead, he found himself watching Claire as she listened intently to an elderly gentleman's stories about his late wife, her eyes bright with unshed tears of empathy. When the dancing began, Jonathan extended his hand. "May I?" Claire hesitated. "I should probably mention David and I never really danced much. I'm not very good at it." "Neither am I," Jonathan admitted. "We'll figure it out together." On the dance floor they moved slowly, carefully, finding their rhythm. Claire felt solid and real in his arms, not like the perfectly polished women he usually escorted to such events. She smelled like vanilla and something uniquely her. "Thank you," he said quietly. "For what?" "For being yourself. For making this evening about more than just proving a point." Claire looked up at him, her eyes serious. "Jonathan, can I ask you something? When was the last time you did something just because it made you happy? Not because it was strategic or necessary or good for business?" The question caught him off guard. He couldn't remember. As they swayed to the gentle music, Jonathan felt something he'd forgotten existed: peace. Not the satisfaction of a deal closed or a goal achieved, but the simple contentment of being present in a moment with someone who saw him clearly. The evening ended too soon. In the car afterward, they sat in comfortable quiet for a moment. "This was supposed to be business," Jonathan said finally. "I know," Claire replied softly, "but it didn't feel like business." "No, it didn't." They looked at each other in the dim light of the car, both recognizing that something genuine had grown between them over the course of the evening. "Claire," Jonathan began, then stopped. "I'm not very good at this. Relationships, I mean. My ex-wife would tell you I'm married to my work. David used to say that people aren't projects to be managed," Claire said gently. "They're gardens to be tended. They need time, attention, patience, things that can't be rushed or strategized." Jonathan nodded slowly. Would you like to have dinner sometime? Not for business. Just because I'd like to spend time with you." Claire's smile was radiant. "I'd like that very much." 6 months later, Jonathan found himself in Claire's kitchen, attempting to help her prepare dinner for her adult children who were visiting. He'd burned the garlic twice, and somehow managed to oversalt the pasta water, but Claire just laughed and gently guided him through each step. "Cooking is like investing," she teased. "It requires patience and the ability to adjust when things don't go according to plan." Her son Mark, a teacher like his late father, was showing Jonathan photos of his students' science projects. Her daughter Sarah, a nurse, was sharing stories from the hospital that reminded Jonathan why he'd gotten involved with the Children's Foundation in the first place. This was what he'd been missing, Jonathan realized. Not just romantic love, but the warmth of family, the simple pleasure of belonging somewhere just as himself. Later, as they cleaned dishes together, Claire bumped his shoulder playfully. "So, any regrets about hiring me as your fake girlfriend?" Jonathan set down his dish towel and turned to face her fully. "The only regret I have is that it took me 54 years to find you." Claire's eyes filled with tears, the good kind, the kind that came with overwhelming gratitude for unexpected blessings. "David used to say that love isn't about finding someone to complete you," she said softly. "It's about finding someone to share your completeness with." Jonathan pulled her close, marveling at how perfectly she fit in his arms. "I'm ready to share," he whispered. Outside, the city sparkled with its usual ambition and drive. But inside, Claire's warm kitchen, surrounded by the gentle chaos of family and the promise of tomorrow, Jonathan Mitchell finally understood what it meant to be truly wealthy. Sometimes the best investments, he reflected, were the ones you never saw coming. The end.